कूजन्तं राम रामेति मधुरं मधुराक्षरम् आरुह्य कविताशाखां वन्दे वाल्मीकि कोकिलम्। रामाय रामभद्राय रामचन्द्राय वेधसे रघुनाथाय नाथाय सीतायाः पतये नमः। जयत्याश्रितसन्त्रास ध्वान्तविध्वंसनोदयः प्रभावान् सीतया देव्या परमव्योमभास्करः परमव्योमभास्करः।
श्रीमते निगमान्त महादेशिकाय नमः। Vishwamitra entered the court of Dasharatha. While Dasharatha was worried about the future, especially the marriage of his sons. Here he says, Darakriyam prati Valmiki. So he was worried about the marriage of his sons. What was the age of Rama? I had said it was 12. That is when Vishwamitra enters the court. Dasharatha, listening to the few words of praise by Vishwamitra, promises that whatever he desires, he shall grant. Bruhi yat prarthitam tubhyam karyamagamanam prati ichhamyanugrihitoham tvadartham parivriddhaye karyasya na vimarsham cha gantumarhasi suvrata. So that is when he promised. Now, who was this Vishwamitra? We need to understand Vishwamitra's charitram. Well, in Srimad Ramayanam itself, in the same work of Valmiki, towards the second half of Bala Kandam, when Shatananda, the Purohita to Janaka in Videha Desham, Mithila Desham, understands that his mother Ahalya has been granted Shapa Vimochanam by Rama, he thanks Vishwamitra for having brought Rama to Mithilopavanam. That time, he narrates the charitram of Vishwamitra. That is how Vishwamitra charitram is brought forth by Valmiki in Ramayanam. What I am doing is, I am cutting that portion and pasting it here. Now, I shall tell you in advance who this Vishwamitra is. Amongst the many composers of devotional compositions in Bharata Desham, in the southern state of Kerala, there were devout kings to Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu is referred to as Padmanabha, the one from whose Nabhi, navel, Padma, the lotus comes. So, to that Padmanabha, these kings treated themselves as Dasa, servants. So, one of those kings who was a great composer, a prolific scholar, was Swati Tirunal. Tirunal is the title given to the king, and Swati is the name of the star on which he was born. So Swati Tirunal, in one of his gigantic, majestic, a very, very moving composition called Bhavayami Raghuramam, brings forth the essence. He says, Dinakaran Vayatilakam Divyagadhi Suta Savana Vanarachita Subahu Mukhabadam Ahalya Pavanam Anaghamisha Chapabhangam Janakasuta Pranesho Ganakopita Bhagorama Garbharamita Saketam Bhavayami रघुरामो भव्य सुगुणारामं भावयामि रघुरामं भावयामि रघुरामं. I pay my obeisances to Raghurama, states the poet. That time he states, Dinakaranvaya Tilakam, the one who is born as the scion in the Surya Vamsham. Dinakaranvaya Tilakam, Divya, Gadhi Suta Savana, Gadhi Suta. There was a king called Gadhi. Gadhi Suta is Vishwamitra. So this is how the Charitram goes. Now, let us understand who this king Gadhi was. Gadhi was a very able administrator, a great devout person. Now, Gadhi had a daughter called as Satyavati. This Satyavati is different from Mahabharata's Satyavati, who is the mother of Parashara, who is the mother of Vichitravirya, Chitrangada, who is the wife of Shantanu. That Satyavati is different. That Matsyagandhi is different from this Satyavati. This Satyavati was the daughter of Gadhi, the king. She was given in marriage to a Maharishi called as Ruchika. Ruchika lived for some period of time in a hillock. It was called as Bhrugu Tunga. This Bhrugu Tunga Parvatam, where Ruchika stayed, later or probably today is referred to by a different name. It is called Mount Abu in Rajasthan. It is very close to Udaipur. So this Mount Abu was called Bhrugu Tunga. Now, Satyavati was desirous of a very good son, very good child. In those days, parents just didn't desire children. They wanted good children who will be beneficial to the society. So Satyavati expressed her desire to her husband that even before we can think about coming together, we should pray to the divine that in the future we should have children who are of huge benefit and use to the society. Ruchika said okay. On the very same day, his mother-in-law, that is Satyavati's mother, King Gadhi's wife, she too came and said that from the moment I've gotten my daughter married, I feel very left alone in my house. So my husband and I are desirous of a good child too. So the mother-in-law is asking, the wife is asking. So Ruchika performed a great yajnam to ward away the sins that could prohibit or prevent them from getting pregnant, and then seeking the divine intervention. That is when there were two Vedikas placed with two different pots. So that pot had Kalasha Jalam. That Kalasham had Vaidika Jalam. It had Vedic waters because Vedas were being chanted, and those waters which were purified by the mantras were to be consumed by the respective one, the mother-in-law, the other his wife. So this mother-in-law kept noticing this particular yajnam happening very religiously, sincerely. Towards the end of it, the one who was performing the Ritvik, that is Ruchika, he said the yajnam is over. Now I shall go to the waters of the flowing river, do Avabhrita Snanam. Avabhrita Snanam means you take bath head to toe by reciting a particular portion of the Vedas called Agavarshana Suktam. I shall do that and come. By the time he left, the mother-in-law thought, see, I have also asked for a child. Maybe he has paid a lot of attention to the yajnam where his wife has asked and not given equal attention to mine. Thereby, the waters in the kalasham of my daughter may be much better than what my kalasham is. So she went in a hurry and consumed the waters from the kalasham placed for her daughter. Her daughter was not aware of it. She went and consumed the waters of the other pot. She thought that was the pot meant for her, and she consumed the waters meant for her mother. As soon as the Rishi arrived at the Vedika scene, where the Yajnavatika, where the Yajnam had taken place, he understood what had happened. He said, you should have not been so hasty. You should have consulted with me and then taken a decision. Then they asked, why? What is wrong in this? the waters meant for my wife will give birth to an able Brahmana. A Brahmana is supposed to be bereft of anger. A Brahmana is supposed to be Kamo Karishit, Manyura Karishit. He must not have eternal desires. He should be meditating and contemplating upon the Brahman only. To impart knowledge is his only duty, to lead a simple life. Whereas a Kshatriya has the ability to enjoy all the comforts, has the valor to fight his enemies. That is how a Kshatriya should be. Whereas my mother-in-law has consumed the waters meant for a Brahmana Stri. My wife has consumed the waters meant for a Kshatriya Stri. Thereby, in the due course, in a normal, natural fashion, you both will get pregnant. But the pregnancy will ensure by the end of it, when the children are born, the child born to Gadhi's wife, a Kshatriya's wife, will develop Brahmana qualities. And the reverse, my wife Satyavati shall have a child who shall develop Kshatriya qualities. So, the king's wife will have a child with Brahmana qualities. Brahmana's wife will have a child with Kshatriya qualities. But that moment, Satyavati goes and tells her husband, see, I was not aware of this. My mother had committed the mistake and I became a byproduct of it. So I was not supposed to bear the brunt. Please excuse me from this particular curse. That is when Richika said, see, I have not cursed you. I have just told you this prediction. But one thing I can pray, because it was not your mistake directly, Satyavati, your son who may be born will have Brahmana qualities. But your grandson, I cannot assure he may have Kshatriya qualities. Now, who are these children? Who were these children born? Gadhi's wife delivered a son. His name was Kaushika. Kaushika, who was born as a Kshatriya, later becomes a Brahmana, a Brahmarshi called Vishwamitra. And the son of Satyavati, who was excused from that particular curse-like statement, is Jamadagni. Jamadagni's son Parashurama had to bear the brunt of what act was performed by his grandmother. He grows up as a Brahmana, later adapts Kshatriyahood. So Parashurama was born into a Brahmana kulam and became a Kshatriya. On the other hand, Kaushika, Vishwamitra, was born as a Kshatriya, later became a Brahmana. So this is the precedence that we have to their charitram. Now, Kaushika, who was the son of Gadhi, grew up as a Kshatriya. He was a very able administrator. One day, on his sojourn to the forest, he entered in the hermitage of a great Maharishi called Vasishtha. Vasishtha welcomed his guest, who was Kaushika Raja, and told him he and his army shall be served with delicious food. The king was reluctant. He said, you are a poor Brahmana. What can I take from you? I don't want. Vasishtha said, don't worry, you all sit. I will serve you food well. You will have the best of food. True to what Vasishtha said, Kaushika had a lavish spread on his leaf. So were the soldiers. Now, Kaushika got into thinking, how could Vasishtha, being a poor Brahmana, give such a lavish feast to his guests, and that too in such quantity? He asked, who is granting you all this? That is when Vasishtha said, Shabala, come here. That is when Shabala came, the divine cow came. These cows had the ability to grant those ingredients necessary for cooking food that were very, very high end. See, for example, in our normal houses, we use tamarind, dal, wheat flour, rice flour. We don't end up using olives, jalapeno and all of that day in and day out. It is not that we cannot afford, it is not that we cannot buy, it is not that it is not available. It is available, we can afford. But we cook with basic dishes. Imagine that a poor person is telling that I cook every day with jalapenos and blueberries and raspberries. So this is when the king got a bit doubtful. He called, and that is when Vasishtha called Shabala. Shabala was a divine cow that could grant whatever Vasishtha wanted. The moment Kaushika saw that particular cow Shabala, he thought, this must be under my control. Anything which is so precious should come under the government's control. he said, I cannot take it anymore. I need this particular cow. That is when Vasishtha got really angry. He wanted to fight back Kaushika and his army. So he asked Shabala to create armies. That is when she created many armies of Kambhojas, Pallavas and so on. Who are these Pallavas? These Pallavas were people from Iran, Kambhojas around Afghanistan region. Such people were created and they started fighting with Vasishtha's army. Now, Vasishtha's army, Kaushika's army, they fought. Who won? We should see it in the next episode.
Dear Astika reader, I am happy to be authoring a two-part book on the Ramayana in English. The first part is slated for release in the year 2024. The book aims to recreate and retell the Ramayana of Valmiki, conforming to the ancient commentaries and other allied literature. To receive notifications of the book release, kindly register with www.deshikadaya.org/books. Namaskaram.